to episode 55 of the CanadaFootballChat.com Recruiting Masters podcast, brought to you by the CFC Insider. We're Katie and Clint Utley, and you're listening to the number one place for all your football recruiting and prospect news across Canada. If you're listening to the show for the very first time, welcome. We're glad you're with us. We've got our NCAA edition today, and Quincy Ford joins us again out of Ontario for all our NCAA news. Quincy, how's it going?
I am good. How are you?
We're good. Before we get started, everyone can follow us on our Facebook, our Twitter at Chat Football, Instagram CFC_football, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as check out the digital store on CanadaFootballChat.com, which has a lot of fantastic recruiting resources that you can check out and some pretty cool swag. But let's get right into it, Quincy. Let's talk about Akheem Mesidor. He's a freshman defensive lineman, 6'2", 268 pounds, out of, an Ottawa native. He goes to West Virginia. He might be the best freshman on the West Virginia defense. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know everyone on the West Virginia defense, but it'd be hard to think otherwise with the way he's been playing this year. He's made several plays and has turned a lot of heads his first season. Yes, he has. I mean, this is a guy who, in, I want to say, 5 games, has 19 tackles and 4 sacks as a true freshman. So he's among the sack leaders in the NCAA. I think he's like top 20. Somewhere in there, might be like top 15. But he's someone, I watched his high school highlights, and he's quite impressive how mobile he is at his size and just how athletic he is at his size. He's a phenomenal tackler, whether it's him making plays and wrapping someone up in the backfield, or whether he can deliver the boom to kids too, just drop his shoulder and hit stick them. Like he hits like a linebacker at the D tackle, D end position, like wherever he is on the line. That's another thing about him. He can line up in multiple places on the line, which is valuable. Quick get off, and overall a very promising prospect at West Virginia.
Clint, do you remember much about Mesidor when he was ranked on the CFC 100?
He was a linebacker back in the day, and then he kind of went through the Victor Tindondo camp there, and then made his way down to a prep school. But now I remember him as he was a linebacker, and then he was an end, and then all of a sudden he was a defensive tackle. But all the way along, I remember he always had crazy measurables, and he always seemed to do extremely well, whether it was at a combine or whether it was his highlight videos down at the prep school. He lit it up. And now he's lighting it up at West Virginia. So it's not surprising he can actually kind of cover ground and hit like a linebacker, because I'm pretty sure, well, he was a linebacker in high school before he went down to and Victor got him ready for going down to the States and his time at the prep school. So yeah, he's always been a really good prospect, and he's always had the numbers to back it up. He's kind of a bit of a tweener because he's only 6'2", but Quincy already said it, the fact that he plays inside and outside, that kind of goes a long way. And I'm sure if he continues at this rate, he'll probably establish himself, and he'll be another one of those Canadians who starts to grab a bunch of headlines as he makes his way through his career in Morgantown.
Our next prospect is a redshirt sophomore. We spoke about his brother on the last Pre-Masters podcast, Sydney, but his brother, Chase Brown, is a running back. He's 5'11", 195 from London, Ontario. Went to St. Stephen's Episcopal in Florida and has now transferred to Illinois to play with his brother, his twin brother. He's one of the top running backs in his class. He won a state title his senior year down in Florida. What can you say about Chase, Quincy?
Chase Brown, I know his second game with Illinois this year, because I think they played 3 games. He was slightly more quiet yesterday. I'm not sure what his production was. I want to say like he had somewhere in the 30s or 40s in rushing yards. But in his second game, he had a game with 11 carries for 73 yards. So that was the biggest game of his college career. But he's pretty impressive on tape. I went back and watched his high school stuff. He has great burst and acceleration coming out of the backfield. He looks pretty shifty with his change of direction and his slight cuts that you really don't see coming. He's deceptive and elusive in that way. He shows good balance. The thing with him, he's a little small at 5'11", 195 for the height to weight ratio, but yeah, he's certainly quite impressive.
Well, the two of them, like you kind of can't talk about one without the other.
I said last week, I believe, when we were talking about his brother, when we kind of first started to watch them play the London Junior Mustangs, we thought it was the same person. person. And then we realized there was actually two of them. And then we really caught up with them when they went down to the school in Florida. They literally tore that apart. And that's probably the film Quincy's talking about, because the both of them in at St. Stephen's and Episcopal, it's not like huge football. I think it's more like private school football down there. They just absolutely lit it up and actually led their team to the state title. But I remember him being like the top running back in his class with regards to the CFC 100 list at that point, which is now the CFC 200 list. But yeah, I remember him vividly. I do, and his brother. They've both done extremely well wherever they've been, whether it's the school, St. Stephen's down in Florida, London Junior Mustangs when we caught up to that. And then obviously they went to the two separate schools. Now they're at the same school. It'll be interesting to see kind of how it shakes out for them as they go through the rest of this year.
Coming out of high school, we talked about it a little last time, how Chase was like the bigger name coming out of high school between him and his twin brother. Chase was a 3-star recruit with like 6 FBS offers. He had Indiana, Syracuse, UCF, and Western Michigan, which is originally where he started off. And as a true freshman, he was the backup running back. He had 71 carries for 352 yards on the year before transferring to Illinois for last year, where he to be with his brother, where he redshirted last year in a pretty like deep running back room. But they had their 2 top running backs from last year graduate, so now it's him and Mike Epstein in the backfield this year, and they're the two-headed monster for them right now.
Our next prospect is Griffin Barrett. He's a senior. He's a linebacker. He's originally from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. He's going to Simon Fraser up here in BC, which is our Division II NCAA university, the only one in Canada. He's 5'11", 215. He seems to be a pretty instinctful linebacker. He does a pretty good job in the box. Seems like a solid tackler. What's up with him, Quincy?
Yeah, those are actually the 2 first things I was going to say. When you watch him, he seems like a guy, kind of reminded me of a poor man's Amen Ogbongbemiga, like in terms of his IQ and sure tackling ability. Without the blitzing ability that Ogbongbemiga has. Obviously not the same prospect he is. High IQ guy. He does a good job reading the play as it develops in the backfield. He's a sure tackler when it comes to him. He doesn't light people up, but he's just a sure tackler who shows good form and wraps up. Last year he had 105 tackles. 105 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 1 sack, which was good for a first-team all-conference, along with Ryson John, who's now with the New York Giant, I believe. He was their star receiver last year. And coming into this year, Griffin Barrett was a preseason All-American at the Division II level. So some high expectations for him coming into this year, which ended up not taking place, but that means something still.
What does, like with Simon Fraser, how able are they to get looks like from the NFL? Like, do you see him doing the NFL route, or is this more of a CFL draft prospect?
Oh, yeah, I don't see him being an NFL guy. I don't see that happening. But Rice and John, I think he was a bit of an odd one out, because he was like at times like he was just the whole SFU offense at times, and his whole thing is that he's a 6'7" receiver. Right. So yeah, it's kind of like he's kind of more like him being a specimen or like a developmental guy, whereas Griffin Barrett's just a football player. But Griffin Barrett, 5'11", 215, and he ranked in our CFC40, so he's a guy to keep an eye on come draft.
Do you remember Griffin, Clint?
Those were the really lean years at Simon Fraser. So I actually remember Griffin was a CFC 100. Anyways, he was the only recruit the one year that I recognized off the Simon Fraser recruiting list. And they only brought in like 7 recruits that year. So that goes a long way to explaining some of the growing pains they've had the last few years. But I remember him in high school. He was the same in high school, except in high school, because obviously it's a step down. He was actually lighting people up when he hit them, whereas now it's more of he's tracking and tackling people. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he fits in, because they like to draft their like hometown guys. Maybe he'll end up with the Riders and play special teams for a year or two. I do remember he was the only legitimate recruit the one year for Simon Fraser. And I do know that they had a really lean recruiting class that year. That's why he really, really sticks out.
I looked back at him coming out of high school and saw that he won at AE Peacock in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. They had at at a lower tier than the top tier because they're a smaller school. It was he played for the 3-time provincial champions. That's how they were doing over at AE Peacock during his years. Quite successful, winning a championship 3 out of his 4 years there, playing 12-man football. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure the classifications in terms of divisions in Saskatchewan's a little different now because 3A, I'm pretty sure, like plays 6-man now, but I think there's like 7 classifications now, and there used to only be 4. So I don't know if I want to say he's a 3A 12-man provincial champion because I'm pretty sure 3A could be misleading because that's not what he is not what the school is right now anymore. But at the time, their school was a 3A 12-man provincial champions for 3 years in a row.
Let's move on to our next prospect. He's a redshirt junior, Tyrell Richards, a linebacker, 6'4", 234. So those are awesome measurables. He's a Brampton native. He's at Syracuse. One of the better linebacker prospects that we've at CFC have evaluated over the last few years. He's incredibly athletic. Clint, what were you saying about, you were saying before the podcast that, it would be nice if they just stuck him in a position and kept him there.
The coaches at his high school, the coaches at Football North had mentioned a few times that he had been bouncing around. So he went down there and he was like literally the special teams player of the year. Maybe not year, but he had gotten on multiple weeks for his play on cover teams. And you thought that's when Syracuse had a big year. And then you thought it would lend itself to him transitioning into one of those, like a starting role somewhere in their front 7. And then it was like he's literally been bounced around the last 2 years because I think they had to change on their defensive staff. So that kind of never helps. But he was a linebacker and then he was a rush end and then he was back to linebacker. And I don't know what they've done now. Maybe they've, like every other college defense, went to that like hybrid 3-4. So now he's like a hybrid defender who's a backer and an end, but they've never seemed to settle on it. And that's kind of been marred by the fact that Syracuse has kind of not been on a good run. So I'm sure all those things, because I mean, when he came out, we were like, he was so athletic and so big and so physical. I thought he would have the same kind of career as like the linebacker from Oklahoma State, who I'm not going to say his name, but I honestly thought Amon. I thought he would be better than Amon, even though they're not exactly in the same year, but they're in that same kind of window. But yeah, they've never, ever settled on a position for him. And if you want proof of that, you can ask his dad.
What do you think, Quincy?
I remember back when Football North first started, and he was the first Division I guy out of Football North, I believe. He went to Syracuse. Now they're sending out Division I guys every year, but he was the first of many guys out of Football North. And like Clint said, he's a great special teams guy. I'm pretty sure last year he was their special teams MVP, like he alluded to. He's a physical player, mean hitter. And like you said, he's athletic and he has sideline to sideline speed and pursuit abilities that jump out at you. But so far this year, he's missed 2 games. I'm pretty sure one for disciplinary reasons and the other because of an injury. This year, he has 22 tackles and 2 sacks in 5 games. And it seems this year, at least, he's taken on more of a linebacker role, I think, than pass rush guy that he's been more kind of the past 2 years. And now he seems to be solidifying himself a little bit more as a linebacker. Yeah, kind of like Quint said, he's moved around in terms of position and hasn't really, he's a hybrid guy right now.
Where do you see him going in the future?
I suspect that he'll be in the CFC40 come next year, because he's going to be a 2022 draft guy. So I think between, like, I don't know who I'd have to see a list, but I know, like, off the top of my head, there's like him and Tavius Robinson as edge outside linebacker type guys. Those are probably the top 2 at that position by a decent margin right now. He'll definitely be a first, probably 5-round CFL pick. Earlier than that come the time, but just like to keep it safe, I'm just going to say that because it's earlier.
Let's talk about our last prospect. He's a BC native out of Victoria, went to Belmont. He is a monster of a man. So Dontae Bull, he's a junior. He's an offensive lineman, 6'7", 335 pounds. He's going to Fresno State. We've always said that he's demonstrated that he's a baby left tackle, and now we're saying he's all grown up, but he's still a left tackle. So he started the last 10 games. Clint, you called it 5 years ago.
Yes, I did. I'm not going to toot my own horn, though. So he's just like big and could run. He always could run. I don't know if he's like really down to working out and being in the weight room. I didn't get that impression from him in high school because a lot of that was au naturel, like just big and long and like super athletic. I don't know what it looks like now. I know he started 10 games. We couldn't find a depth chart for Fresno. So I don't actually know if it was at the tackle position or if it was inside. It's probably a little too tall to be inside, but like he was like awesome in high school. He played both ways, and there was like a couple games where he would play nose tackle, and even in our provincial, we won provincial titles kind of in the era that he was here at the mighty New West Hiax. But he would always give us fits because he would absolutely destroy our center. And then he would go in and play left tackle, and he was kind of wasted because there was literally on that Belmont team, there was like maybe 8 or 9 kids who like went both ways and were like good football players, but they just didn't have like bodies and depth around them. So he was kind of part of maybe a 3-man show at Belmont his senior year. They did win a couple games though, and I do know that he was on the team, I think, that beat Vancouver College. So that's a big deal for Belmont.
Big deal.
Yeah, so I remember seeing him when he was super young, and I called it then. Is he a left tackle, Quincy? Do you know where
Yes, he's a left tackle at Fresno State. He stepped into the starting role there last year, and he's one of their top returning players this year, although I know he struggled. I didn't watch him, but like I saw statistics and stuff, and he struggled in his first game. I'm not sure how he did his last game, but in his first game he struggled, so I'm guessing he will not keep up with that and turn it around and perform as he did last year, probably keep improving. But he's massive. I know we were talking about Sage Dockstader the other time and how he was big, and Dontae Bull's even bigger. So don't know what they fed him growing up, but huge.
Like, what a great name too. He's like one of 3 Canadian linemen on that Fresno team.
They have Alex Dumais on the defensive line, and I think Mark David Bienem on the defensive line too. I think those are the 3 Canadians they have.
Anime kid was a guard. I was going to say Dontae Bull has the best name ever though.
He does have a cool name. Both him and Richards, I anticipate being in the top probably 20 of the CFC40 come next year. It's early, but top 20 in the CFC40, probably going the couple first rounds. So in the CFL draft, I doubt either of them are going to be NFL guys, but still, first 3 rounds in the CFL draft is not too shabby at all.
That's still pretty good, yeah.
And he'll be perfect in the CFL too.
He's one I haven't gotten to actually walk in university yet, so I'll have to check him out. But he's one of the few who it's like he's been difficult to find video on.
I can see him like just gauging off of what I saw in like high school. And I think I watched a Fresno game like a year ago, but early in the year. So it would have been when he probably just stepped on as a starter. So he would have been all like excited and fired up and truly focused. I'm assuming that he's kind of like a really good above average run blocker and would probably do well with heavier defensive linemen and probably dealing with certain things. I could see him absolutely having fits with speed rushers.
Yeah, maybe a guard.
He might. Well, yeah, that's what I'd say. But he's so tall for a guard, right? And
yeah,
I don't remember him having the ability to really bend and play low. So, like you just said, I'd have to watch his film again. But he is a monster of a man. And like literally when he's standing there, he can literally touch his own knees with his hands. Like that's how long his arms are.
Those are another great 5 prospects that we've had a chance to talk about. And every week it seems like there's something different going on down in the States with the current conditions. So
go Joe Biden.
Well, thanks, Quincy, for all your good insight once again.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun to be here.
That's it for us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Recruiting Masters. Like I said, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, @ChatFootball, Instagram, CFC_football, and YouTube. And don't forget to get your CFC Gold membership where you can access all of these rankings that we've been talking about, the CFC 100, 150, 200 high school classes of 2022 and 21. And then our CFC40, which this year we combined youth sports and the NCAA prospects together into one list. And also our CFC60, which is our SAGEP list, which we probably won't update for a little bit just because of what's going on with COVID and the lack of a season. And then our CFC10 specialist list, our kickers and our punters and our long snappers. So you can check that out on CanadaFootballChat.com under the rankings tab. And we hope everyone stays safe and has a great week. That's been the Recruiting Masters, brought to you by the CFC Insider.
Looking for more exclusive Canadian recruiting content? Become a CFC Insider Gold or Silver member today for access to rankings, analysis, and the latest recruiting news from across the country.